Hello everybody, before today's video gets started, something quickly I need to tell you all about. Based on the incredible success of my last integration, HelloFresh have asked me to do another couple of adverts for them, and I need to tell you when I'm doing the advert because it may be so subtly woven into the narrative you might miss it completely and think it's not a paid product placement, when it definitely is. Keep your eyes open for the secret signal when the promotion takes place. Anyway, onto the video. Hello everybody, today I am doing the car I know you've all been desperate for me to review. This is a 1997 Toyota Hilux Surf SSR X Limited. Oh yeah. If you are part of the 40% of my audience that identify as British, you may be currently watching this and thinking, what on earth is that? I don't ever remember Toyota selling those. And that would be because in Britain, they did not. We did get this car's immediate predecessors, badged as the Forerunner, which is what they also called it in the United States. But they were such a riotous success, they never bothered selling this third generation car here. What I'm driving today is a Japanese import. And over there, rather than call it the Forerunner, they dubbed these the Hilux Surf, which I think is far, far cooler. And for some reason, I cannot get out of my head the idea that this is what the Taliban use on their holidays. It was in production from around 1996 until 2002. Though named and styled after the Hilux, it in fact shares much of its componentry with other Toyota vehicles, including the Tacoma, from which it gets its engine and gearbox, and the Land Cruiser Prado, from which it's taken its chassis, complete with now fully independent suspension. Here in Britain, it was our version of the Prado, dubbed the Colorado, which was this car's technical successor. This car has been brought to me by its kind owner Simon, who has something of a weakness for Japanese vehicles. I have previously driven both his Sora and his initial D replica AE86. This was purchased for the famous Rust to Rome Rally, the cheap or old car challenge which aims to test the limits of man and machine. More specifically, this car was bought for the adventure where they head off to Morocco. So, those shots of the engine bay covered in orange dust, that's real Saharan sand, and that's why it hasn't been washed off. The bird poo, though, that's Scottish, and that's just there because that's the kind of car that this is. He purchased it because the rules allow you to bring something that is either cheap or old, and he decided that old would be better than cheap, and as a fan of JDM stuff, he thought, what can I get that's a little bit interesting but also likely to get me there? He wound up with this, and I have to say, I'm really kinda in love with this car. Not just because it's cool, rugged, manly and off-roady. That's why I've chosen to do all of the static shots in a slightly more picturesque part of the country than I normally would. No, I love it because it's the kind of vehicle that was designed explicitly for people who needed what it was. I really, really struggle to think of many people buying this as a lifestyle choice. Okay, the X trim did get you the carbon fiber effect stuff, which is a little bit hopeful, but apparently the G trim that sat above it got you fake walnut, which I think is equally as optimistic. Though it's not exactly a pretty car, very little in this class is. Inside, I have to say, I absolutely adore the mixture of classic 90s Japanese switchgear and the crazy patterned fabric that tended to go with that era of vehicle. You have just about the right amount of technology, so you've got a regular modern Sony head unit down here, a CB radio, which is part of the Rust to Rome setup, air conditioning that actually works, a sunroof that actually works, and no fewer than 5 windows that work. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you're guessing what the 5th one is, and what this little switch down here does, that's because the window at the back also goes down, which is really cool, although not anywhere near as cool as the special parking mirror that's also electrically operated. That's pretty cool, isn't it? But you know what else is cool? Being able to get home after a long day out filming and being able to knock yourself up a nice, tasty, delicious, and if you need it, calorie-controlled meal in only 20 or 30 minutes thanks to HelloFresh.
Like this spicy chicken and tomato naan that I'm having tonight, one of dozens of recipes available to you, including vegetarian, easy cook and family-friendly favourites. HelloFresh cuts out the boring shopping stage of eating at home and lets you skip straight from choosing to cooking. They supply almost everything you need, perfectly portioned and complete with nutritional information for those who are tracking their intake. As an example, the only things I needed from my store cupboard today were salt, pepper and a bit of olive oil. By following the easy-to-use recipe card, I had a tasty meal ready to go in just 20 minutes, allowing me to get back to working like the edit slag that I am without having to resort to a takeaway. But don't take my word for it. Use the special JAYEMM60 discount code to get a fabulous 60% off your first HelloFresh box and 25% off your next 8. They've got solutions for between 2 to 4 people with up to 5 meals a week and options to pause when you go on holiday as well as customize what you get. Thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. And now, back to the surf.
This third generation Hilux Surf also introduced handy features such as rack and pinion steering, ABS, a longer chassis and how could I forget to mention the integrated compass with altimeter. Oh yeah. These were available with either a 4 or 6-cylinder petrol engine and a choice of a couple of diesels. Both were a 3-litre turbo 4-cylinder, but you had the option of either with or without intercooler. Simon specifically sought out an example with the intercooler, not only because it gives you an extra 10 horsepower, bringing the total up to 140, and torque 253 pound-foot, that's 343 newton meters. You also got the bonnet scoop, and the non-intercooled models are also known for cracked heads, though of course the priority was the bonnet scoop. As per the Hilux, these have body-on-frame construction, a favourite of the serious 4x4 crowd, which does compromise the dynamics somewhat. There is a constant shimmy in this car every time you go over an uneven piece of tarmac, which is every piece of tarmac here. However, it does mean that in the event of a big off, the thing is a lot easier to fix. You could also have the car with either a 5-speed manual or, as we've got here, a 4-speed auto. Next to that very industrious but very satisfying and deliciously clicky shift lever with the overdrive button on the side, you'll find another for the 4-wheel drive system, which is currently disabled, so the car is presently rear-wheel drive, but you can have it in 4-wheel drive mode at full speed, and it's electronically controlled too. Just push the button and it will activate. You also have the obligatory low range modes as well for serious off-roading. Having now owned the car for just over a year and successfully completing his Rust to Rome trip, the only problem that Simon has actually had with this car was, ironically, some rust. When he got it, some was spotted on the roof and it had gone all the way through, which is apparently quite a common thing. That's now been fixed up and the car is all good to go and he's currently enjoying it. As am I have to say. This really is one of those videos where I feel like I'm not quite so much telling you useful things, but just bringing you along for the ride. And speaking of which, we're going to get past this cyclist here and I'm going to put my foot down and tell you what the car's like. I absolutely love driving this thing. From the fact that you've got this wonderful commanding driving position with an excellent view of the bonnet that actually I've been screwing up the whole time I've driven it because I keep thinking there's a lot more beyond what I can see. But there isn't. You have the typical little Japanese mini mirror over there to help you position it for tight parking scenarios, and you can see out in pretty much all directions, including when needed up as well, and it's great. Okay, there's a constant shimmy because of that body on frame thing, and there's a good chance that the suspension in this car has seen better days. But the engine and gearbox, they're actually surprisingly good. For a big 3-litre 4-cylinder diesel, it's actually quite smooth. Okay, at idle, the 4-wheel drive lever does wobble so much my camera couldn't actually capture it accurately, but the car does move with only the 4 speeds to choose from. Honestly, just let the gearbox do its own thing. You have got a low and 2 selector here, but just leave them alone unless you absolutely need them. If you put your foot down like that, all that will really happen is the car make a lot more noise and drink a bit more fuel. You'll not go any faster. Even the brakes have pretty decent feel. There's a fair bit of travel in the pedal, but they've always stopped me and done exactly what I've told them to. The steering is actually the big surprise for me. Okay, it's slow and it hasn't got all that much feel, which is exactly what you expect for a car of this kind, but it's really precise. There's no slack in it whatsoever, and the car will turn with a keenness that does belie the weight of the thing.
Which could be because it's not actually that heavy. Unlike today's SUVs, which are nearly all members of the 2-ton club, with some closer to 3, the Hilux Surf weighs in at an incredible 1.8. In other words, about the same as a modern-day M3 xDrive.
This means that when the mood takes you and the road permits, you drive it like a youngster. It's a momentum thing. It's all about threading it through the bends, managing that weight transfer. There's a real joy of driving this thing. I love it to pieces. I don't care that it's full of Moroccan dust and materials that honestly escaped from a 1990s workout video. I think Mr. Motivator used to have a shirt made from the same stuff as these carpets, but it's fun, real proper fun. Because you're high up, you've got great visibility, and yes, I know I spend a lot of time moaning about 4x4s, but those who've watched my videos will know that's because I moan about the fact people buy them who don't need them. Let's agree, shall we? Simon would have made good use of this car by taking it to Morocco. That's the sort of thing you buy a car like this for. And it did it, happily. I even love, and I know this will sound absolutely daft, the simple act of getting in the boot. First off, it's cavernous. I mean, it's absolutely perfectly sized for this kind of car. Rear seat space, by the way, is also pretty good too, though you don't exactly have a lot in the way of luxuries back there. However, to get into said boot, because you've got that big rear wheel carrier, first off you need to pull a nice satisfying little lever and then move the whole thing out of the way, which is all really heavy and definitely over-engineered, and then lift up the boot. There's a theatre and a drama to getting in the boot, and it feels really rugged and masculine. I know it's stupid, I know it's silly, I know it's total nonsense, but it's also really satisfying. I like that. I'm sure some would consider that an annoyance and an irk, but actually you can get around it by simply just rolling down the rear window and then just leaning in if you need to. Fuel economy is also not a strong point. On a run, it'll do about 32 the gallon, giving the 70-litre tank a range of about 450 miles or 600 kilometres in the real world. Around town, it's not quite so good, dropping to potentially low teens, but what did you expect? It's a somewhat old-fashioned auto box with a big heavy car attached to it. The point of diesels from this era wasn't economy, it was durability and low RPM torque, which it's got. Sort of. Simple fact is, though, I've just gotten out of an Aston Martin Rapide S, a 550 horsepower, 190 mile an hour, 165,000 pound V12 Aston Martin, which was all nice and lovely, but I'm having just about as much fun driving this. I'm definitely going slower, and I'm definitely trying harder to achieve that lower speed. But sometimes, that's what driving is all about. I quite like this. Anyway, I want to say a huge thank you to Simon for bringing it out, and as ever, to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.